It's election season in the United States, so we thought this was the perfect opportunity for us car enthusiasts to take a look at the history of presidential cars. Presidential transport history is as colorful as the country's history, beginning with ordinary carriages and now tank-like structures of power and technology. So before the new commander-in-chief takes charge, let's take a look at the amazing history of presidential mobile transport, starting with the first ever wheels to transport a US president. If there's one thing that all Americans can agree on, it's the freedom of the open road. Let's get started. You have to go all the way back to 1901 to find the first president to use an automobile. It starts with William McKinley and the Stanley Steamer. While it's not strictly considered an official presidential car like today's state-owned vehicles, McKinley's use of the Stanley Steamer started the connection that the United States and White House had with the automobile. Stanley Steamer was made by Stanley Motor Carriage Company, the first American automobile firm to produce steam cars exclusively. The concept of the steamer was new. Steam cars had a smooth operation and were comparatively much quieter than the gasoline engines that were increasingly being used. When McKinley rode briefly in a Stanley Steamer, it was as a part of a brave new era of autos, all the way up to the highest places in American society. Unfortunately, McKinley's presidency was short-lived, and he was assassinated in September of 1901, barely 4 months after that momentous automobile ride. The next president, Theodore Roosevelt, did not share Ford's love of automobiles and preferred horseback riding, so automobiles were no longer used in the White House, at least for some time. Despite the fact that it was not bulletproof or extravagantly equipped like its successors, the car was important as it was the only Stanley Steamer linked to a sitting President McKinley, and credited with kickstarting the legacy of presidential automobiles. Fast forward to 1909, and we see a president who fully embraced the automobile, William Howard Taft. Taft was the first to put cars into regular use at the White House. A risky move since automobiles had not yet become a necessity and were thus considered luxuries. Still, Taft, who was a progressive thinker to some extent, believed that cars were the future. He bought 4 cars, a white Model M Steamer, 2 Pierce Arrows, and a Baker Motors electric car. Yes, they had electric vehicles all the way back in the early 1900s. These cars formed the first presidential fleet. The white Model M was steam-powered, highlighting the presence of models that were transitioning from steam to gas control. The Model M was luxurious for its time. It had smooth wood and polished bracing. It provided comfort close to a boat in terms of noise reduction. The novelty was a bonus in a time when cars were loud. The Baker Motors electric was definitely an innovative technology at the time, but the Pierce Arrow was gasoline-powered, which presaged the future of car technology. Taft kickstarted an era that would span a century with a selection of presidential wheels. His fleet was more than simple automobiles. They represented the future of the burgeoning America auto industry. Taft's decision gave the nation assurance that the White House was prepared to open up to the future and that the automobile was not a passing fad. This transition would lay the foundation for the modified, specialized vehicles that dominate the presidential fleets of today. The Pierce Arrow would remain a staple during the administration of Woodrow Wilson, and he loved the car so much he purchased one for himself after his term was finished. Warren G. Harding made a name for himself by driving to his own inauguration, and Herbert Hoover took the streets in style with a Cadillac V16. But the legacy of presidential cars really starts during the administration of Franklin D. Roosevelt. By 1939, the presidency had fully embraced automobiles, and President Franklin D. Roosevelt was gifted with one of the first custom-built presidential cars in history, the Sunshine Special. The chassis of the Sunshine Special was established from the Lincoln K series, and the car's modifications were done under the arrangement of Ford for the sitting president. This car was actually an advancement in the transformation of presidential vehicles. Since Roosevelt was afflicted by polio, he had to get a car that would enable him to sit comfortably. The cleaners were also wider with lower steps, and a special one known as Sunshine Special would ensure that it was easy for him to gain entrance. Nevertheless, the availability of an open top enabled him to greet the public during parades, and due to the fully unobstructed view of the president and the spectators, it received the nickname Sunshine. But as the Second World War escalated, threats to the president's life also increased. The Sunshine Special was later fitted with bulletproof glass and metal that adorned the carriage. This was the first presidential car to undergo such enhancements. In this way, Roosevelt's Sunshine Special laid the precedent for presidential vehicles that performed both a ceremonial function and also served to securely transport the president in the course of official state business. Roosevelt's Sunshine Special continued to be used until his death in 1945, and his vehicle created a new standard of vehicles that provided both luxury and security for the president. This car was not just an automobile. It was a sign of President Roosevelt to the American people in a time of strife. In its time, the Sunshine Special became iconic, projecting both the power of the president and also protecting him from harm. The Lincoln Custom of 1942 was used by Franklin D. Roosevelt and later by Harry Truman, representing some progress towards the armored cars of today's presidency. Unlike the Sunshine Special, this Lincoln Custom had a fully enclosed body and was significantly better armored to provide even more security than before. Although it was similar in appearance to the prior Sunshine Special, it was significantly heavier due to the extended armoring and some revisions for security enforcement on official presidential outings and trips. After Roosevelt, the car was used by Truman, who frequently was seen waving from the car. The Lincoln Custom was kept in service even after the war was over, and it was used under Truman. The Lincoln Cosmopolitan made its debut to the public in 1950, when President Harry S. Truman made the automobile his official one. This car, manufactured by Ford and tailored by Hess and Eisenhower, was an epitome of American opulence, while also touting strong, ambitious car defense during potential political strife. The Lincoln Cosmopolitan was a large car with an armor-plated body, bulletproof windows, and a total weight in excess of 6,000 pounds. The outside might have been austere, as befitted a post-war Britain, but on the inside, it was all about the president, complete with leather seats and wood paneling. Truman's Cosmopolitan also had the novelty of a foldable roof, which made the automobile suitable for open-top cruises under security permission. This Cosmopolitan served the needs of both public functions and for Truman's trips. It was designed to withstand some of the challenges of the time, especially those that were emerging as the Cold War intensified. This pointed to the new purpose of presidential cars, which were not purely signifiers of power, but vehicles of protection. Truman's Cosmopolitan endured and served several other presidents, most notably Eisenhower and Kennedy, putting the Cosmopolitan among the longest tenured cars of the presidential autos. Historically, it is viewed as a car that bridged between the elegance of the first era of presidential cars to the protection-oriented vehicles that came later. Few automobiles in the automotive history of America are as legendary or mournful as the 1961 Lincoln Continental SS 100X, which was personally ordered by President John F. Kennedy. This car was a black four-door convertible limousine fabricated and developed by the Ford Company and modified by Hess and Eisenhower. The car came with an open top, which the president really liked. With an adjustable rear seat and rear grab handles made to support the president during parades, the SS 100X was an icon of American car manufacturing in the 1960s. However, the sleek construction was missing a few key security features that would come to define presidential cars in subsequent administrations. This lapse would prove disastrous on the fateful day of November 22, 1963, when President Kennedy was shot and killed while riding in an SS 100X car in Dallas, Texas. After Kennedy's assassination, the car was substantially altered by adding a permanent bulletproof roof, armor, and other protective sidings. These changes turned the SS 100X into one of the first heavily armored presidential cars. However, one of the darkest days in American history led to the vehicle becoming known as the Death Car. The sad story of SS 100X meant a complete change in the principles for presidential cars. After this, open-top presidential cars were no longer in vogue, and it was the time when armor protection emerged as the crucial factor. After the gruesome tragedy of 1963, LBJ ordered the 1965 Lincoln Continental, which had better protective features and yet bore the grandeur that was associated with previous cars. Unlike the Continental used by Kennedy, this model was fully enclosed and fitted with armoring. This car responded to the mood of the USA at the time, trying to hold on to tradition but with an eye on security due to growing mistrust of the government. Lehman Peterson added armored doors, bulletproof glass, and better communication in this Continental, turning it into a rolling fortress. It was all intentional for the era of the 1960s, when there was growing civil unrest with various movements and protests against the government. The 1965 Lincoln Continental gave Johnson an insured and mobile command center, allowing him to go amongst and talk to a divided nation. This car became synonymous with Johnson's presidency and both his great legislative accomplishments and the threats to national security at that time. The 1965 Continental was not as well known as the Continental used by John F. Kennedy, which it replaced, but it can't be overemphasized that the car helped protect Lyndon B. Johnson during a period of civil unrest. The Lincoln Continental used by the White House in 1969 encapsulated sophistication and toughness. It was originally ordered by Johnson and subsequently used by Richard Nixon through one of the most challenging eras in American history. This Lincoln was Nixon's official state car, which associated it with the backdrop of the Vietnam War, Cold War diplomacy, and a split American society. This model included armor plates and bulletproof glass, making it one of the most secure cars that ever transported a president at home and abroad. This Continental was one of the first to be purposely built for its defensive role, with reinforced tires as well as emergency driving systems. This Lincoln is now parked at the Richard Nixon Presidential Library and Museum, along with other items that define that era of history. The 1972 Lincoln Continental became one of the most storied presidential cars, as it carried Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, and Ronald Reagan through a transformative period in American history. Ordered as a 1970 model but customized in 1972, this Lincoln was notable for its resilience, witnessing 2 assassination attempts, one on President Ford in 1975 and another on President Reagan in 1981. This model also featured extensive armoring, bulletproof glass, and reinforced bodywork to withstand gunfire and even small explosions. These defensive upgrades turned the Lincoln Continental into a rolling stronghold. Today, this Lincoln is displayed at the Henry Ford Museum, embodying an era of political resilience and evolving security standards. This car was made for President Ronald Reagan in 1983. For many years, Cadillac was considered to be one of the leading representatives of the American image, and the Fleetwood was no exception. Sleek in design and built for strength, the Fleetwood was also fitted with several forms of security, unique and innovative to the late 20th century, that would protect the president against the newer threats of the time. As we've seen many times before, the Fleetwood was altered in nearly every particular way to fit the requirements of presidential transport. Bulletproof coating of glass and plastic replaced the earlier glass windows and body, while a steel-reinforced shell to the structure of the car completed the defensive features of the vehicle. Its tires were run flat, which means that even if the tires are punctured, they could still work to enable the car to evacuate from dangerous situations. This version of the Fleetwood was among the first presidential limos to include such sophisticated security features, which pointed to the escalating worry for the life of the president in the 80s. It had state-of-the-art communication equipment to enable Reagan to communicate with the White House, the military command, and the intelligence services. This communication capability was specifically crucial during the Cold War because it made it easier for the president to decide on the go. Comfort was also kept in mind while designing the interior. The seats were leather-based and the interiors were even wooden paneled, all sleek and elegant. The Fleetwood Cadillac paved the way for a new era in presidential transportation. George H.W. Bush returned to Lincoln in 1989 with his customized Lincoln Town Car. This model was particularly special because it was created with the presidency in mind, as one of its main ideas was armor protection, and the other was exceptional communications. The 1989 Town Car design ensured the president had a safe, reliable car during his administrations at a time of transition when the Cold War ended and the Gulf War started. Having windshields made of bulletproof material, the doors' use of armor plates, and the different types of communication equipment secured in the car, the Lincoln Town Car provided the president with connectivity and command while he was mobile. Its design represented the seriousness of a presidency that was steeped in diplomacy and in warfare. As the official limousine of Bush and being a part of the presidential fleet, the Town Car also offered protection as well as a formal environment for the president, who was famous for its calm and experienced demeanor. Upon the arrival of President Bill Clinton to the White House in 1993, his administration issued the Cadillac Fleetwood Brougham, which had an enhanced form of security and also technological advancement compared to its predecessors. Clinton's Fleetwood Brougham was designed and built with innovations to show what protective cars had evolved into with security support, as well as speedy communication and control infrastructure for the president. The Brougham used reinforced steel panels, bulletproof glass, and a protected body that could handle high-power firearms and bombs. This vehicle was also fitted with a run-flat option, which had become mandatory for the car to be able to flee in case they were attacked. These security features stemmed from progressive changes in the nature of presidential automobiles in the early 1990s, in the aftermath of the Cold War between the US and the Soviet Union, which brought a new era of global challenges. Mobile communications was one of the most important characteristics of the car. It ensured that Clinton was always connected with the White House, the military, and intelligence agencies. Telecommunication via satellites was incorporated to provide secure and real-time communication that was essential in the diplomatic and military crew management on the move. This capability gave real-time communication and information accessibility to the president, allowing key decisions to be made while in transit. The interior of the Fleetwood Brougham had a focus on comfort and luxury, with nice leather seats, a wooden interior, and vast legroom that provided added comfort, while all the communication buttons were located where the president could reach them. Through heightened security, opulence, and technology integration, the Brougham was a proper car for the time. In functionality and design, the Brougham was another proof of how the White House aimed at providing the president with safety and efficiency regardless of the situation. This car continues to be another significant part of the book on the history of presidential cars, which shows how technology and security started to merge. Launched a little after the 9/11 attacks, Bush's DeVille was built with extreme levels of security integrated together with remarkable features, complete with advanced armoring that would help shield the president from a host of dangers, including terrorist attacks. The Cadillac DeVille was built on a reinforced truck chassis and therefore was very strong besides being stable. Externally, there was armor that could protect the vehicle against gunfire, explosions, and other threats. Run-flat tires enabled the DeVille to drive even with damaged tires. This feature was crucial to fulfilling the president's escape conditions. The doors, which were also heavily fortified, were said to weigh as much as the doors of a Boeing 757 to prove the extent of protection offered. In the DeVille's communication section, Bush was connected directly to the White House and to other military and intelligence units. The DeVille also provided an oxygen supply and 90 basic medical necessities, including blood reserves of the president's type, to make the car a rolling ambulance should the need ever have arisen. The Cadillac DTS of 2005 was another leap forward in car technology and was first used by Presidents Bush and subsequently by President Barack Obama. Focusing on security and novelties, the DTS offered such improvements as an enhanced ballistic system, blast protection armor, and run-flat tires. The president had pointed to this car as evidence of change in presidential mobility in the 21st century. Bulletproof, yet stylish. The car's subdued look made it hard to realize that it was well armored with bulletproof glass and steel framing that could resist different forms of attack. When Obama succeeded, he also relied on the vehicle during part of his term in office, making use of the advanced communication systems and security enhancements. The Cadillac DTS was the limousine of the new post-9/11 era, where presidential transport became fully fledged command centers. The DTS was a combination of style and sophistication to the extent of providing the president with the means of conducting his business securely and in secret. It proved up to the task of service to Bush and Obama, both presidents who faced a slew of domestic and foreign problems, and helped lay the groundwork for the even more shielded cars that emerged in recent years. In 2009, Barack Obama was presented with a new presidential vehicle that would set a standard of security and high tech, the Cadillac One, which would become known as the Beast. Constructed from reinforced steel on a heavy-duty truck platform, with armor weighing approximately half a ton and propelled by a V8 6.0-liter engine, equipped with night vision capability and number plate cameras, the Beast was a 20,000-pound fortress that could easily repel nearly any type of attack, from bullets to biochemical warfare. It became the safest presidential car ever constructed and rapidly became known as a technical wonder, serving Obama throughout his term and then used for the first part of Donald Trump's term. The Beast's armor was fabricated with steel, aluminum, and ceramic to enhance the possibility of the armor shielding the vehicle. The bulletproof glass was about 5 inches thick to withstand high-velocity bullets, and the door weight was enough to sustain against explosion forces. What's more, the car even had run-flat rims, which could still operate after a puncture, ideal for a quick getaway amid risky circumstances. The trunk had a supply of fresh oxygen and fire-extinguishing equipment that could have been used in an emergency. The vehicle was also used as the command and communications center where Obama could connect with the White House and other key departments. The Beast was equipped with countermeasures such as tear gas launchers and other functions, which underlined the increased safety requirements in the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks. Due to safety and security measures, the Beast became a recognizable symbol of the American readiness to do everything to protect its leaders. This was not just an automobile, this was a rolling armored fortress, showing just how much the Secret Service would be willing to do to protect the President of the United States. The legacy of the Beast presented a new standard for presidential vehicles by being equipped with top-shelf technology and unbeatable protection. The 2011 Ground Force One was a one-of-a-kind bus built on the chassis of the Prevost car, in which Barack Obama could take longer trips. This bus was known as the Beast on Wheels because it was a large vehicle designed to give Obama the level of protection associated with a presidential car, but on a scale sufficient to reach out to the people in large population centers where normal motorcades might not be possible. Outfitted with the same level of security as the presidential limousine, or state car, Ground Force One boasted armor, bulletproof glass, and top-rate two-way radios. Its interior served as an office that included a secure telecommunications system that enabled Obama to perform presidential responsibilities while on the move. The Ground Force One made connection with communities possible for the president. He could visit new areas and still reduce safety hazards. This bus still retains its role in transporting the president, showing the changing needs and increased size of the protective shield for the commander-in-chief. The current model came into service in 2018 and also carried the moniker of the Beast. It debuted under President Trump during a visit to New York City. When Joe Biden was sworn in as the President of the United States in January 2021, he assumed the passenger seat of the most technologically advanced version of the Beast that Cadillac has ever built. Based on the Cadillac experience and sticking to the fundamentals introduced during Obama's presidency, This new updated Beast came with more technology and security to meet threats at the current time. The armor and bulletproof glass used on the current version of the Beast were very advanced and also sported resistance against chemical agents and assault rifles. The limo was equipped with run-flat tires, night vision, and defensive aids for protection against most attack forms. It also had its own supply of oxygen and firefighting gear to help it survive chemical or biological attacks as required by the complexities of the 21st century. Inside, the current Beast acts as a command post replete with highly sophisticated communication to guarantee that the president, the White House, and military and intelligence personnel maintain continuity of communication. In addition to being a command center, the Beast also sports an intensive care unit, a medical suite, accompanied by the blood units, match the president's blood type, in case of an attack that requires an emergency transfusion. It shows that the Secret Service is ready to enhance the president's security in a world that has become very unpredictable. The current Beast reiterates Cadillac's role as the provider of presidential vehicles while increasing the organization's development. It demonstrated how much America was willing to invest in perfecting the technology to protect its presidents. The armored, car-like structure of the Beast shows the progression of presidential cars from mere vehicles to tanks on wheels. Starting with Mr. McKinley in a Stanley steamer and moving up to Mr. Biden's armored Beast, the country has transformed American presidential cars over 100 years of technology and security improvement. Biden's Beast perfects the evolution of the presidential motorcade. It is the epitome of protection, comfort, and technology. Every car is symbolic of the new era and the problems that American leaders face and symbolizes security and technology used to safeguard the president. Which of the presidential cars stands out to you? Let us know in the comments section, and always remember to hit that like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more videos on legendary vehicles.